Hello to all my viewers who are watching right now. I just want to make an announcement, which is that there's going to be some changes with the video I'm going to be making, which is unfortunately going to have to be split into two videos instead. Now, I know what you're about to say, so don't be angry. I can already see the pitchforks over the hill, so just let me explain. So to start, the video I was planning on making before was originally going to be how to play as Germany in Fire Rises, more accurately how to play as the leftist accelerationist version of Germany, which is a branch from the communist path. Also, I was planning on mentioning some of the basic facts about the mod itself. Like the mechanics, but however, the problem I encountered was that the video was getting too long, which I think will do poorly because of viewer attention. Now, the good news is that the plan currently is to discuss about the early game content for Germany, and also the mod mechanics and other general stuff. Then after, a part 2 video will be released, which will discuss about the communist path for Germany, which I already told you which path I'm going over before, and also by the time you're watching it's already in production. And that'll be all, thank you for understanding. Hello my viewers, and today I'm going to be covering over Fire Rises. Now if you don't know what Fire Rises is, it's basically a Wont mod, which is it's basically a mod that's set in 2020, and in a nutshell, it's anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So it just has the worst of all outcomes. So for example, the American Civil War starting, then you have the Asia War, then you have the war in Europe, effectively World War III. But what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to be talking about how to play as Germany more specifically, but also I've mentioned in the title of the video of how to play Fire Rises, and that's because I'm going to be covering over all the mechanics of it. Now, to start off, let's talk about the laws. Now, obviously in vanilla Hoi4, you obviously have the economy, and then you have your, you have your conscription, and then you have your trade laws. Now, your economy laws is over here, then your trade laws here, and also your conscription laws over here. But however, you have all these sets of different laws. So for example, this right here is mainly for the economy, this for military, and finally for social. Now if you're wondering what's the point of these laws, well, they just give you little tiny bonuses, so as you can see right here. But however, just a warning, some of them can also give some negative bonuses. It's like with the high taxation, where making civilian factories and offices are actually more expensive, but in return you actually get more money. Now, why is money important? Well, it's not like TNO, where effectively you'll face a massive debuff if you go into a deficit, but it does actually give you slight debuffs depending on how worse it is. So for example, over here you have your GDP, and then you have your debt. Now, currently we have a positive effect, and we can only keep that if we have more GDP than debt, which you can actually pay off automatically. As you can see that every single month, because we have a money surplus right here, basically what will happen, it will just go into the debt and slowly pay it off, which won't do anything massive, it just increases our stability. But however, if we have more debt than GDP, then we'll start getting some negative effects, so negative stability, then maybe negative construction, and so on. So really, you want to make sure keep this high. Then on the other hand, you have inflation, which increases your consumer goods and decreases your stability. But however, also make sure it doesn't go into negative inflation, because that can impact your construction speed, and I can't remember what thing impacts, but I know that impacts something else. I just can't remember what it is. Now, if you want to change your things, you basically click here, and then you can actually decrease the inflation. But just a heads up, if you have zero interest rates, you see you have a high construction, and your poverty development actually increases. However, if it's actually low, then yes, your inflation does go down, but obviously your poverty and also your construction take a hit. So for example, if I change laws, so let's say right here, and yes, I have given myself 200 political power so I can show it off. And also, let's say if we go straight to low taxes. Now, nothing won't change immediately because it only changes when it obviously reaches next month. But also right here, we can go in development. Now, as you can see right here, the development of, well, the social, I'll say, yeah, we could say that. Yeah, societal developments, that's it. Basically, you can see how currently it's at 1.9, which means that every single month that passes, it will increase by 1.9%. But if we increase it, so right here, you can see that this law basically decreases it by 0.5. If we instead increases by 0.5, instead of decreasing it, now it actually increases. Now, these laws, these development laws, you can't actually change them. See? You can't click them. Well, how do you increase them? Well, that's because these smaller laws right here actually give you a development bonus. And when your development reaches 100%, it goes into the next stage right here. It's similar what other mods have, so like I said, TNO is a massive example that has a similar feature to it. And just like in TNO, there is also a negative side effect if it goes down. So for example, if the development drops to negative minus 100, then basically the law will decrease and then it will just get worse bonuses, as you can see right here. Where right here we have the maximum, amount of bonuses, but then over here we get the worst of it. And also, another thing as well, is that when it comes to gaining money, the two laws that mainly focus on that is the, economy laws. So, as you can see over here, we're on mass consumerism, which means that we'll get the highest amounts of benefits as well, but obviously construction speed for militaries and dockyards will be slowed down, and also consumer goods will be at 40%. While if we move to patrol or war economy, then obviously what will happen is that the industry development will go down, we'll also have less taxes, and also consumer goods actually decrease, which is a good thing. But however, like I said, this isn't vanilla Hoi4, so it's kind of, how do you put this? Because in vanilla Hoi4, you obviously want to rush to patrol and war economy. You don't want to stick on civilian because it's, just pretty much terrible. But obviously in this mod you kind of want to balance out. You want to keep it at consumerism early game until you can actually stabilize your economy. Now there are a few ways to increase more money. So one of the ways is by going through the focuses. So if we go down the German economic path, bam, right here, so we actually get an increase in value factor over here for business. But another way as well is let me check, what was it again? Yes, okay, so to increase money through building factories or offices, basically this is what it looks like. Now obviously you have your civilian factories and your mills. Now here's the thing, your military factories, they obviously just produce, military goods, but they don't give you money. Meanwhile, basically factories, the civilian factories, they obviously give you, more, stuff to build, but they do also give you some taxable income and also GDP growth. However, it's not a lot. However, offices on the other hand, they are just purely for money, and you can see they actually produce 10% factory output. So mainly you would only use them if you're just trying to fix your economy. Meanwhile, when it comes with energy, now in vanilla Hoi4, we have a new resource which was added, which was coal. However, in Fire Rises, it is called energy, and we can get that through a few key ways, which is either solar farms, power plants, and nuclear. And as you can see right here, that energy farms, they're the cheapest ones, but they give you the lowest amount of energy, while nuclear power plants give you the most amount of energy, which is 12. But however, the only problem is that they are, very expensive to make. But however, you can also trade for energy as well. So if you ever run out of energy, you can always just import it. Now, just like with vanilla, this only affects your factories. So if you actually have less power, then your production will actually slowly go down until you can't produce anything. Now let me skip to the next month so I can show you what happens when you change laws. And there we go. As you can see right here, now, we're in a massive deficit. So obviously, if you want to fix that, you want to increase taxation, make it moderate, and also make sure keep this high. But another thing as well is that if we go into our thing now inflation's actually go down, which will help to increase stability, and it will also, obviously give us more factories as less are in consumer goods. And not only that, but depending on which nation you play as and which ideology you switch to, depends on your government and also economic policy. So for example, because we're playing as a democrat Germany, we are a parliamentary republic, which each one of these basically give you your own unique bonuses, as you can see right there, and it's also the same with the economy. And obviously every nation has their own version of these economy and government laws. So for example, let's say tag solve. As you see that Russia also has a different political system which gives some, different buffs, and they also have a different economy law that also gives some different types of buffs. It's also the same with China and America and everyone else. So now that I've demonstrated the laws, I think next one gone is the power balance. Now, because we're going to be focused on Germany, mainly accelerationist Germany, I feel like I should probably give you tips on how to play Germany during the early game. So one of them is public trust, in which what will happen if it's low, then, well, your political power basically tanks and you get minus stability and war support. Well, if your public trust is high, not only do you get recruitable population, but also you get a plus 15% stability and war support. And how this is influenced, you can actually go here to the Bundestag, in which you can see now our government agenda is anti-extremism, which means that we have to keep authoritarianism and also social authoritarianism all combined below 5%, and if we do that, then it will actually increase our public trust. However, if they actually have more, then it will start decreasing, and it's the same if we have less than 25% consumer goods, and also if the CDU, which is the current elected party, which has less than 33% popularity, which is over here. Now, basically, the reason why the popularity is important is that when an election happens, whichever party has the most popularity will basically win. So, for example, let's say if the next election played out and I supported the SPD. Now, if the SPD has the highest amount of popularity, then what will happen is that they will become the new elected government, and then after that, this decision will actually change. So instead of me trying to keep 33% above for the CDU, it's actually going to be for the SPD now. And it's the same if it's the AFD, the Linked, and the Greens, and yeah. Now, another thing to also mention is COVID as well. Now, every single nation suffers with this. However, Germany is actually the most easiest one. It's just simple, go down the tree and instantly rush to get this. And when you do actually get it, you'll be given a decision to actually crush the coronavirus, which gets rid of the negative debuffs, which you do because, well, it heavily cripples you, as you can see right here. And the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get. Now, another thing to talk about is the economic decisions. Now, this is similar to the propaganda posters in vanilla Hoi4 if you play as the Soviet Union, how they give you little tiny buffs, as you can see right here. If I click it, however, they're only temporary. So as you can see that after, well, a couple of days, it will just revert back to how it was. And you actually unlock these little campaign slots by actually doing some of these focuses, as you can see right here, as they unlock decisions. But however, another important decision is actually the discussion about phasing out nuclear energy, in which, if you fail it by shutting down nuclear power plants, you can see it hurts your public trust massively and it hurts your stability. While if you complete it, it will give you plus 10% stability and it will give you a small little buff for this bonus right here. And basically the way how you get it is that if you complete either these two decisions, a little decision will actually pop up here, here and here, in which you need to spend at least 75 political power, and you can only do it one at a time, by the way, and it will take a year for it to shut down nuclear plants in this region. Then you can move on to the next one and then the one after until they're all shut down. But another thing to also keep an eye on is that some of these focuses right here actually involve getting where is it? Ah yes, the Bundestag support. So as you can see right here, to get it, the total, you just need to have support from the, well, parties, and also their popularity depends on how much does their support weigh. So for example, because the CDU and the SPD are very supportive, their popularity basically totals up together and it will be my total Bundestag support. But however, obviously because I have less support from the Greens, the Linked and also neutral from the AfD, obviously they won't affect it. But if I can get them to positive, then what will happen is that they will support me. And not only that, but to lobby for these parties, these can only happen when an election season begins. Now, if you want to support the AfD, the Greens and the Linked, you pick over here. If you want to support the CDU, SPD and the FDP, then you need to click this decision. And obviously defending the youth's minds, it's just to lobby against instead, so it's just the other way around. Oh yeah, and also, that reminds me that when you lose to Russia during the First European War, you need to at least focus before that happens on the economic bonus, because when you play as right-wing or left-wing Germany, you actually do keep this national spirit. However, if you lose to United Russia Party, which are these guys, then what will happen is that Germany will form the European Union and you'll actually lose this national spirit. So, like I said, if you're going either left or right, make sure you work on this national spirit so you actually keep the positive bonuses. Because right now, it may give you terrible bonuses for factory output, but the further you go down your tree, the more positive they actually get, as you can see over here. And also you need to go down this path if you want to fix the oil crisis, which massively hurts your economy, which happens when Saudi Arabia goes to a civil war, which is, I think it's a year from when the game starts, and also about that time America will go into a civil war as well, which will cause a financial crash. But however, the financial crash, the negative national spirit only lasts for a certain amount of days, so it's nothing to worry about, and you can actually decrease it by time it's, for how long it goes away by doing decisions. Now, well, yes, it will fix the economy faster, but the downside is maybe it will sacrifice political power, maybe it will sacrifice stability, but yeah. And moving on, another thing to mention is how to get the guy we want in charge. Now, you can't just flip to communism, that's not how you get accelerationist Germany. What you need to do, you need to actually have the link to win the election. Now, I'm not sure if they have to be in power when you lose the war, but personally, just make sure that they win the election, because they at least need to win it once. And once you do, you'll actually unlock a hidden leader, which is a South Korean poet. But after, when you get the decision to select him, what will happen is that your focus tree will change slightly, and your ideology will change to leftist accelerationism. And also another benefit as well is that he gives you a bunch of bonuses as well, which I'll show you later in the video. This isn't related to what we're going over, but this is sort of necessary if you want to know which Germany you want in charge. So for example, if you want to play as the right-wing Germany, if you want to play as either fascist or monarchist, then what you need to do, you need to have, if you want to flip to fascism or monarchism, then what you need to have the Soviet party win the election in Russia, and then they need to beat you during the European, war. Now you said civil war for a second. But meanwhile, if you want to form the European Union, then you have the United Russia Party win the Russian election and then beat you during the First European War. And then it's the same thing if you want to flip to communism, but instead you need to have the LDPR Russian party basically win, and then you'll flip to communism. And that'll be all. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next time.